What is going on, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here. Thank you so much for tuning in to this pre recorded edition of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Of course, as I bring you a new show each Wednesday night, you're tuning in Wednesday night at 8 on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network. Really pumped up and really excited to recap a huge win for the Buffalo Bills, one that I think was their best win of the season, a blowout victory against the Seattle Seahawks. One that Seattle, yes, they had some self-inflicted wounds, but the Buffalo Bills did something that they don't often do. They took advantage of when their opponent had self-inflicted wounds. We didn't see that in previous weeks. I'm going to dive into that. I'm going to also dive in to the Bills' upcoming matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Of course, on the bottom left, you can see my social media at Ryan Thomas Take. Of course, I wanted to give a shout out to the social media of everybody. Right, Buffalo fan base. We got a great brand. We got a great umbrella. We're sponsored by 26shirts.com as well. We got a great lineup, a great slew of shows. I'm really happy to be a part of this network, and I'm really happy to be a part of the shows that I've been a part of, whether it's the Kagan Report, Sunday Sessions, of course, the Nickel City Crew, and I plan on being on a lot more as the season trudges along here. And I plan to have some guests in the process. It's been a little bit tough scheduling wise, but I know one thing is for sure. Wednesday at 8, that time slot is my time slot within the Buffalo fan base, and I'm really proud of it, really happy about it. Consistently creating content is something that I really pride myself on, and being a source of information, being a source of, I guess, opinion to allow others to form their own opinion, something that I really enjoy. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Of course, follow me on social media if you haven't already at Ryan Thomas Take. You can subscribe to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast as well on YouTube, as well as Facebook, as well at Ryan Thomas Take on Instagram and X, as I mentioned. So YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X as they call it these days. Really important, right, to keep things flowing. And as well, I like to let everybody know that my podcast is available on all audio podcasting platforms. So whether you're tuning in via the live stream, you're able to visually chime in and fire away some comments in the comment section below. You're able to chat with myself. You're also able to tune in after the fact on your drive to work or your drive home from work, whether you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you find your audio podcasts, anywhere you listen, I guess I should say, to any of your podcasts, you can tune in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. So let's get right to it. The Bills blow out the Seattle Seahawks. This was a massive, massive win for the Buffalo Bills. This was a great on-the-road victory. This one especially, you're traveling essentially cross-country, and you get a blowout victory by a score of 31-10. When I talked about this game on Sunday Sessions with Scott and Swank, when I talked about this game on my social media, my score prediction was 31-17. And now, I mean, I might have to play those lotto numbers. I was close, 31-10, but at the very least, 31-10, I will take any victory in which the Buffalo Bills have more points than their opponent, and in this case, they did. So we're treated with a little bit of some tricks. We're treated with a little bit of a treat of a victory prior to Halloween. That is the corny pun of the show. There's always got to be one, and that was it. Buffalo dominated this game, folks. Bell to bell, blow for blow, whistle to whistle, however you want to call it. And yes, I've talked about this every single week. The Bills need contributions from everybody outside of Josh Allen. It can't just be Josh Allen, carrying the torch, so to speak. We have to have contributions from everybody. And looking at this game, looking at the stat sheet, Yeah, Josh Allen did his thing. He's 24 of 34, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. James Cook had 17 carries for 111 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Ray Davis, 6 carries for 29 yards. But to me, the story of this game is the dual contribution that combined between Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman. Khalil Shakir had 9 catches for 107 yards, and Keon Coleman had 5 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. Dalton Kincaid also found himself on the touchdown, score sheet. So key defensive players, obviously Rasul Douglas led the team in tackles with 5, Teron Johnson with 4, Balin Spector with 3, Greg Rousseau making some big plays in the passing game, believe it or not, batting down some balls early in this game. But this was a dominant victory, one that showed the Bills, in all honesty, showing out a version of themselves that is dangerous. It's a well-rounded version of this team, a complete version of this team that Bills fans have been begging for. Bills fans have wanted to see Josh Allen be able to sprinkle the ball to Coleman, sprinkle the ball to Khalil Shakir. One guy ultimately that did not have his best day was Amari Cooper, but the presence of Amari Cooper these last 2 weeks, since he became a Buffalo Bill, I think has opened a lot of things up for this offense. Might not open things up for Amari necessarily. He did have a decent stat day in his first Bills game, I should say. But it's more so opening things up for Keon, for Shakir, for Kincaid. We've even seen Dawson Knox, 2 catches for 50 yards. That's a high 25-yard per catch clip. We're seeing some guys get open here, and the Bills moved to 6-2, and they're heading back home where they belong. And I like to refer to it as Old Orchard, which was a term that I heard from Julian Edelman, former New England Patriot, former player that I hated when we played him. But he referred to Orchard Park as Old Orchard, which I thought was kind of a cool name. So the Bills moved to 6-2. Now they're heading back to Old Orchard versus the Miami Dolphins. And Tua is expected to play. And with that, there is a lot to unpack within this preview of this Dolphins-Bills battle. Now, I have not talked about this on the podcast really much at all, as this podcast is a Bills podcast. I like to dive into the Bills. But being that the Bills are playing the Miami Dolphins, this is the perfect time to discuss the career thus far of Tua Tagovailoa. And I'm a huge supporter of Tua the person. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a well-oiled dude, top to bottom, and I say that in terms of his personality, his moxie, his swagger. There's a lot to like about Tua the person, but Tua the player, the guy has shown glimpses and flashes of brilliance. He's shown glimpses and flashes of kind of mediocrity, and he's also shown that he cannot stay healthy. And this last concussion that he had suffered a few weeks back against the Buffalo Bills, the fact that things have come full circle despite this concussion, yet again, Tua is expected to kind of tote the rock of that offense and carry the torch and be the quarterback that the Dolphins want him to be. But to me, I feel like it's an extremely unfair ask to consistently ask Tua to go out there, show us what you're made of, come back from another concussion, and let's see what you can do. To me, it's a huge ask. To me, I think it's very shocking that Tua is playing, expected to play once again against this team, against our Buffalo Bills, because this is not exactly the easiest opponent to face for an offensive player. the Bills' defense has been phenomenal this season outside of their two losses. The moments in which in those two games, their two losses represented to the fact that there's been two big moments in those games that have kind of broke the dam, so to speak. That the Derrick Henry long touchdown against the Baltimore Ravens, and then the C.J. Stroud to Nico Collins, what was a 60, 50-yard touchdown where he, burned Cole Bishop deep, and then Nico was out for the rest of that game. Those are the two moments that this Bills defense really kind of had screw-ups. Outside of that, this defense has been pretty good since they played Baltimore. Even the game against the Texans, that was really their only mistake that led to the loss that they suffered. So to me, when I look at the matchup between the Bills and the Dolphins, we talk about Josh Allen all the time, but Josh Allen has proven time and time again the Miami Dolphins defense really is one of the easiest defenses that he's ever faced. Whether it was his rookie season, his sophomore season, his junior season, his senior season, now he's in year 7, and he's had a hell of an easy time playing against the Miami Dolphins. You look at his career numbers, Allen versus any opponent, the quarterback rating, sky high. The touchdown to interception ratio, touchdowns high, interceptions low. The easiest opponent that Josh Allen has ever faced is the Miami Dolphins. That's a fact. So losing only, 2 games in his career to the Miami Dolphins. 1, a drop pass from Charles Clay. 2, a Isaiah McKenzie step out of bounds with 4 seconds left away from Tyler Bass, doing a chip shot field goal. Who knows what would have happened in that game in that dead heat of 115 degrees. So there's a lot of what ifs that could say that Josh Allen, with 2 different things taking place from what actually did, the Bills could have, Allen, I should say, should be undefeated against the Miami Dolphins. That's a different talking point for a different time, but at the same time, is it? When we're talking about 2 teams that are quote unquote rivals, this has been anything but a rivalry over the course of the last 7 years in this Josh Allen era. But Miami is hoping that the return of Tua can put them back to where they think they need to be. And where are they right now? I mean, this season for the Miami Dolphins has gone completely sideways since the departure of Tua. They lost a really close game to the Arizona Cardinals last week. And you look at where everything stands in the AFC East. The Buffalo Bills 6-2, Dolphins 2-5 with 97 points for, which is the worst points for total in the division, probably among the league low. And then you have the 2-6 Patriots and the 2-6 New York Jets, who have lost 5 straight weeks. A disaster of a season for the Jets. But to think that Miami losing Tua, and yet Miami's got a 2-5 record. They've had a bye, so they're about to be 2-6. In my opinion, I think that's spoiler alert on the prediction. But Tua coming back is going to change things. It is going to make their team better. It's just a shock to me that Tua is coming back. It's more of a shock to me that Miami didn't really take the necessary steps to making sure that they had a decent backup this season, knowing the injury history of Tua, knowing that Skylar Thompson could only get you so far, knowing that Snoop Hundley could only get you so far. I felt like Miami dropped the ball massively on trying to bring in a adequate backup quarterback for Tua Tagovailoa as well. The offense has deteriorated because of Tua not being out there. It's not that Tua is that great. It's that the backup, the next man up mentality can only get you so far when your backup is that poor. Gone are the days of Ryan Fitzpatrick. Gone are the days of Mike White. He is a third stringer for our Buffalo Bills. So Miami should have tried to bring in some sort of adequate veteran backup in the aftermath of Tua being out. Maybe bringing back Ryan Tannehill. That was something that was talked about in the offseason. That was something that was talked about during this season once Tua actually was listed as being out for the foreseeable future. I thought there were a lot of options, and I still think there's some options out there right now that they could have gone down. Even, Joe Flacco is an expensive backup quarterback option, but I feel like that would have been a better one for Miami than it would have been even for the Indianapolis Colts, despite the news of Anthony Richardson taking himself off the field. Joe Flacco gets another chance to start. Joe Flacco's the, for now, starter of the Indianapolis Colts, but he would have been the for now starter of the Miami Dolphins had Flacco went to Miami and the same circumstances arose. And it's really tough for me to watch all these shows, have a show of my own, and say things like Tua shouldn't play, Tua should retire. Who am I to say? Who are you to say that Tua should do anything? Ultimately, it's Tua's decision, and ultimately Tua decided, I'm going to come back, I'm going to play, going to give this another shot. But I think there is real reason to believe that Tua is not going to feel good about this decision if, in fact, it goes sideways again, which when you have one concussion, it's not so good. When you have two can turn to three really quick, three can turn to four really quick. It's just the reality, I guess word that I'm trying to look for, I should say, is that's just facts of the anatomy, facts of the human body. You suffer one concussion, it makes it a lot easier to suffer another one, makes it even easier to suffer a third, fourth. You get the point. And I fear for this guy because I think he's a great dude. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's got a great future outside of the football world. And yet, here he is. He's suiting up again. Heart of a warrior, the man in the arena. We all know what that means. That's only the man in the arena can make that decision. And that is the decision to play the game's most high-profile position that is out there. And I respect it to an extent. I do respect Tua's willingness to put himself back out there for potential injury that I think will probably come. And this defense is a tough defense to play against. This secondary is very good. Rasul Douglas has played phenomenally. Christian Benford, he's played extremely well. So the threat of Hill and Waddle are kind of nullified. They're always a threat. I don't want to discount them, but when you have a secondary as good as Buffalo's, and I will throw out there Taylor Rapp, and I will throw out there Damar Hamlin, I don't understand as well why the Mafia has gone after Damar Hamlin as much as they have, saying that he doesn't belong out there. Clearly he does. Because as I alluded to earlier in the show, Cole Bishop, a rookie, allowed essentially the catalyst type play that was the biggest difference in the Bills' second loss of their season against the Houston Texans. If Damar Hamlin was out there instead of Cole Bishop on that play, who knows what could have happened? Who knows what would have happened? And I think that that's something that I think everybody can categorically agree with me that Damar Hamlin has done more than enough to be out there, continue to prove his worth, continue to prove what he's capable of. And there's other guys on this team that have been asked to step up, and they've done it, and they've done it in spades. I have a lot of love for the entire draft process, but I will say that I found myself kind of caught up in it so much that when the Buffalo Bills decided to draft Xavier Worthy, to trade the pick to Kansas City that allowed Kansas City to draft Xavier Worthy, and Buffalo decided to pass, I should say, on Xavier Worthy. I got distracted from my phone for a split second. My apologies. But that, to me, I found myself falling into the trap of hearing about Xavier Worthy and how great Xavier Worthy would have been as a Buffalo Bill, not even that I agreed with it, I just found myself listening to people on social media, in the news, saying that, oh, the Bills, should have went after Xavier Worthy instead. How did they let the Kansas City Chiefs get Xavier Worthy? I'm here to tell you that I wouldn't change that move for anything at this point in the season. We're only 8 games into the career of Keon Coleman. We're only 8 games into the season. And Keon Coleman has consistently dialed it up each and every week. He has consistently produced. He has consistently shown that Keon Coleman is for real. This guy can play. He has attributes that teams die to find in a wide receiver: a contested catch, long, lanky, physical wideout that translates in any era that we're talking about, whether it's this pass happy era that we've seen, whether it's the last 10 to 15 years with guys like Mike Evans and AJ Green, Julio Jones. Keon Coleman is bits and pieces of those guys. I see bits and pieces of those names that I just mentioned: the Julio Joneses, the AJ Greens, the Mike Evanses of the world. Obviously, that's the three that I'm seeing and feeling when I see Keon Coleman out on the field, whether he's targeted or not. That's the type of player that I think he could be. And this is in the rookie stage. This is in the stage of the offense where Keon is a player that is kind of buried on this pecking order, or so we thought, going into the season. With Keon's the rookie, they're not going to force feed the rookie. They got Kincaid, they got Knox, they got Shakir, only returning receiver from last season. But then you add in Amari Cooper, and there's just so many options for Josh Allen to look at. There's so many choices for a defense to have to decide which player do we double team. And Josh Allen is showing true trust in a rookie that I think is giving Keon Coleman even more confidence, allowing Keon Coleman to greatly produce at a high level as a rookie within this offense. I am not overstating it. I'm not overrating it when I tell you that I have been mightily impressed with Keon Coleman. I think that the kid is a stud, and I think that he's going to be here to stay for a very long time. Players like Keon Coleman, players like Julio Jones, players like AJ Green, players like Mike Evans, they last a long time in this league because they're not known for their speed. They don't burn out. They last longer because they have the ability to withstand physically the demands of the wide receiver position. They can outmuscle, outmaneuver the corner or safety that is covering them. And I think that this pick was actually far more of a home run than what even the Buffalo Bills might have realized. And there's a short list of players that I think you could say Keon Coleman was on that short list of players that Josh Allen wanted. And that's a huge deal for the future of this team. All right, so the next topic that I want to discuss is the return of Von Miller. Now, to me, Von has always been a very tricky player to discuss because he's so talented when healthy. We know what he brought to the table in those 8 games. He had, 6.5 sacks or 7 sacks, something like that. It's basically averaging a sack a game. Comes off of this horrible injury and doesn't really do a whole lot last year. Let's just put it mildly. You come into this season and you're hoping that he brings a little bit more to the table. He's averaging a sack a week again. We're getting the return of Von Miller. Now it's the return of Von Miller again. That's what I could kind of, edit this tag to: the return of Von Miller again. And to me, it's a very tricky situation because I have said going into this season multiple times that I feel that this is the last hurrah for Von Miller. I think he's done after this season. I definitely feel that the Buffalo Bills are done with him, and it's largely due to the contract that he had restructured. allows the Bills to kind of move on and go in a different direction. Plus, the off the field stuff last season came back and allowed Von Miller to be suspended, if you want to call it that, allowed or made Von Miller suspended for a few games here, 3-4 games. So I hope that this last, I guess, X amount of weeks that we have left, these 10 weeks that we have, we see Von Miller come back out on the field and return like a bat out of hell, because I think this is the last time that we're going to see him. I think this is the end. The end is near. This is the last year, the last portion that Von Miller is ever going to have. And to me, you hope for the best. You hope that a guy won't find himself in trouble for X, Y, and Z reasons, but we know that unfortunately it's a recurring pattern in the league each and every season. Somebody gets in trouble, somebody does something that they're not supposed to do, and eventually they're punished for it. So I understand why he was suspended. I don't disagree with it in the slightest. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is I hope that now that he's supposed to be back, is he back? Are we going to see the guy that I was really excited for when the Bills signed him? Are we going to see the guy that the Buffalo Bills paid all that money to, that we saw those first 8 weeks of the season? And I remember exactly watching that game against the Detroit Lions Thanksgiving Day. He tears his ACL on that turf field, and it was the beginning of the end. But then he comes back, he shows us something this year, and then he gets suspended. So if it's not one thing, it's another, right? And that's just been the entire tenure for Von Miller in a Buffalo Bills uniform. So the return of him is worth noting, because this is a guy that, despite the trajectory that every guy has, whether it's at a defensive end position or a quarterback, some guys play longer. Not everybody's Tom Brady. Not everybody can play to be 45, especially as a defensive end. Von Miller is 33. He's atop the active sacks leader list, and he's going into the Hall of Fame one day. But he won't be known in Buffalo as what he is known for in Denver. He won't be known in Buffalo for what he's known for in LA when he helped Aaron Donald and the Rams win a Super Bowl. At this time, as it stands right now, it's just been, if it's not one thing, it's another. The injury sidelined him, and here we are again. So the next 10 games prior to the playoffs, which the Buffalo Bills will make, will really show whether this move was worth it. Now is the time to look at it and say, well, this is the last chance that he's got in order to really show us something. So I'm really interested to see what we see from Von Miller, especially in a game against the Miami Dolphins where they have a quarterback with a history of concussions. Can Von Miller get to Tua? Can Greg Rousseau get to Tua? Can AJ Epinesa get to Tua? It's been proven that they can. The question is, what will happen when they do to Tua? What will happen when they do to the Dolphins? This is a very winnable matchup. It's one that Buffalo has proven time and time again that they can win, and win it their way, however which way they want. And now this one is at home. This one's in front of the 73,000 fans at Highmark Stadium. So for my score prediction for this one, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this is a homecoming of sorts for Buffalo. I think it's going to be another big victory. I'm going over 30 points for the offense. I'm going to go 35-17. Bills beating the Dolphins, riding out into a 7-2 victory. Josh Allen over under 2 quarters, 3 quarters. He gets pulled after the third quarter, and we see a healthy dose of Mitch Trubisky come the fourth quarter in this one. So gave you a little bit of everything tonight. This was a post-game show recapping the Bills and Seahawks. This was a pre-game show previewing and predicting the Bills and the Miami Dolphins. And, of course, that game takes place November 3rd. With that being said, happy birthday, Dad. Really excited to tell you not to go to this game as you did a couple years ago when the Bills took on the Indianapolis Colts and Jonathan Taylor ran for 5 touchdowns. Better you being there than me for that one. So Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas. I will be back Wednesday at 8 for your Bills viewing needs. Thank you so much.